Japan's first woman prime minister just won the biggest landslide in Japanese history. In just 3 months, Sanae Takaichi, Japan's Iron Lady, took the right-wing Liberal Democratic Party from the brink of collapse to its best ever result. The party had gone through 4 leaders in 5 years, got exposed for rampant corruption, and their most successful leader ever was taken out over his connections to a Korean religious cult. Takaichi took over a party on the verge of losing after 13 years in power, and won them the most seats of any party since Japan became a democracy. And she did it all as the most right-wing prime minister in over half a century. This is how Japan's Iron Lady led the country's most powerful and most damaged party to political redemption. Japan's Liberal Democratic Party, or LDP, is one of the most successful political parties in world history. They've held power in Japan for all but 4 of the last 70 years by combining moderate economics and pro-American foreign policy with varying levels of nationalist rhetoric. Their most successful leader ever was Shinzo Abe, who dominated the 2010s thanks to his steady, pragmatic public image and his big spending economic policies that they called Abenomics. But on cultural issues, he was a right-wing nationalist. As prime minister, Abe visited a controversial shrine dedicated to Japan's war dead, including over 1,000 convicted war criminals from World War II. One of his biggest goals was to remove the part of the American written constitution which only allows Japan to use its military in self-defense, a change that would be deeply unpopular with the country's neighbors. Abe was the most right-wing prime minister of Japan since his ultra-nationalist grandfather in the 1950s. But he could rely on a kind of safety mechanism to stop him from getting too conservative for the Japanese public. Since 1999, the LDP has been in a coalition with a centrist Buddhist party called Komeito. Having Komeito members in cabinet has helped stop LDP governments from going off the deep end, letting the small party punch well above its weight. In exchange, Komeito leaned on its Buddhist connections to deliver votes to the LDP in seats across the country. Japanese elections have low voter turnout, so Komeito's highly organized political machine helped the LDP hold on to government. With Komeito's help, Shinzo Abe won 3 straight elections, each with a 2/3 supermajority, the first step to changing the constitution. But he never got a supermajority in the separately elected upper house, and he retired for health reasons before he could achieve his goal. He was replaced by a revolving door of short-lived moderate prime ministers who struggled to navigate the pandemic and its aftermath. But Abe's followers still formed the biggest faction in the LDP, giving him power over the direction of the party. Then, Shinzo Abe was assassinated. Abe was killed over his connection to the Unification Church, a Korean religious cult with deep financial ties to the right flank of the LDP. Many right-wing ministers were found to be connected to the church, damaging Abe's legacy and tanking the LDP's popularity. Further investigations revealed a massive amount of broader corruption within Abe's faction of the party. Members were receiving hundreds of millions of yen, millions of US dollars in illegal kickbacks. In a tale as old as time, decades of nearly unchecked power had lowered the LDP's guard against corruption. When they faced the voters in 2024, the LDP and Komeito lost their majority for only the 2nd time since the coalition was formed. That devastation was how Sanae Takaichi became Prime Minister of Japan. She was elected leader of a collapsing LDP after pretty much all of her competitors tried and failed to save the party. And so, the last man standing became the first woman leader. And she's called Japan's Iron Lady for a reason. As an ambitious, outspoken woman in a stagnant, male-dominated party, Takaichi presents as an outsider who gets things done. In her first 3 months as prime minister, she met with leaders in East and Southeast Asia and signed a mineral deal with US President Donald Trump. She also said she could use the Japanese military to defend Taiwan, something which would have been unthinkable before Abe's quest to change the constitution. Just like Margaret Thatcher, the original Iron Lady, Takaichi is a committed traditionalist and a nationalist. Actually, she's even farther right than Abe on cultural issues, dropping his pragmatic public image. But her harsher stances have become more popular as Japan grapples with over-tourism, as well as increased immigration to combat labor shortages. Those issues led to the rise of Senseido, a small far-right party with an anti-foreigner, Japanese-first ideology. In Takaichi's home prefecture of Nara, videos have shown supposed foreign tourists abusing the famous bowing deer. By signal boosting this questionable story, she's been the only leader to move far enough right on immigration and tourism to bring Senseido voters back to the LDP. To many Japanese people, Takaichi's energy is a breath of fresh air after years of scandal and aimlessness in the post-Abe LDP. Which is pretty ironic given that she was Abe's protege, and she kinda just swept all that corruption stuff under the rug. With Abe gone, she's become the champion of the right-wing members who were once loyal to him. Just like Abe, she's visited the War Shrine, and she also wants to change the constitution. She's even against allowing Japanese couples to keep their separate surnames after marriage. That ultra-conservatism positioned her well as a quote-unquote defender of Japanese culture against foreigners. But it also earned her the nickname Taliban Takaichi from a member of her own party. It also led to a breakdown in the moderate coalition that had kept the LDP in power for so long. Citing Takaichi's extremism and her handling of the corruption scandal, Komeito ended their 26-year alliance with the LDP. They saw Takaichi as such a threat to moderate politics that they merged with the main opposition Constitutional Democratic Party. Immediately, this new centrist reform alliance, or CRA, became the most credible threat to Takaichi's power. With their votes combined and Komeito's ground game, the CRA would have probably won the last election. Except this election wasn't the last election, and Takaichi isn't past prime ministers. She called a short election campaign when she was riding high in the polls, so the CRA didn't really have time to introduce themselves to voters. Their brand was weak, far weaker than either of the founding parties, and people didn't really know what they were about. Meanwhile, Takaichi's high-energy outsider style made her into a social media sensation. Japan's urban young people were gripped by Sanamania, rushing to buy the handbags and pink pens that she carried at work. That new celebrity status helped her win over disillusioned young voters in numbers the LDP hadn't seen before. The opposition didn't stand a chance. In the end, the CRA was wiped out in the single-member districts, which make up most of the seats. They lost every district but one in the highly urbanized Kanto region, which includes Tokyo, completely erasing the gains they'd made after Abe retired. That could partially be the result of young voters swinging toward Takaichi. In fact, this is the first time in modern history that the opposition won 0 districts in Tokyo Prefecture. Whatever support Komeito had, it stayed with the LDP and did not follow them out of the coalition. To make matters worse for the CRA, they were also swept out of their traditional union and public sector support bases in central and northern Japan. In Hokkaido, historically the strongest prefecture for the opposition, the CRA held on to only 1 district. Surprisingly, the CRA managed to hold on to almost all of their proportional list seats, which are separately elected in 11 regional blocks. But that's only because the LDP literally ran out of candidates to fill the seats they were entitled to. In Japan, a candidate can run in both a single-member district and a proportional block at the same time, but if they get elected in the district, they lose their spot on the party list. So many LDP candidates already got elected in their districts that the party actually had to forfeit 13 proportional seats. Even with the free seats the CRA got, basically a participation prize, they still lost over 100 seats total in this election. And even though they finished second, the CRA will be basically irrelevant in the shadow of an LDP supermajority. Ishin, an Osaka-based center-right party that finished third, will be more influential than the CRA, since they're Takaichi's new coalition partners. Ishin is more moderate than the LDP, just like Komeito, but they won't have the power to rein Takaichi in like Komeito could with Abe. They just don't have the national presence or political machine to deliver votes in the same way. Besides, the LDP have a 2/3 supermajority on their own, so it's not like they're depending on other parties to stay alive. Together with Ishin, they have more than 3/4 of all seats. If they win the next upper house elections, they could finally start the process of changing the constitution. Abe's vision may finally be within reach. With Takaichi's huge win, you can expect a Japanese government that is tougher on crime, harsher on immigration, and more militaristic. While the West deals with backlash against America's foreign policies, Takaichi's Japan will be a close ally to Donald Trump, who endorsed her during the campaign. The LDP landslide gives Takaichi the mandate to embrace the cultural conservatism that saved her party from Sanseido. But Sanseido's biggest success was driving the national conversation and the LDP to the right. Sanseido's biggest success was Sanae Takaichi. This election marks the end of the post-Abe era of instability. A new, more right-wing period in Japanese politics, dominated and defined by the Iron Lady, is just beginning. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. If you want more content, become a member to see my maps and analysis of elections that don't make it into their own videos. So far this month, I've covered the right-wing victory in Costa Rica, where they're building their own version of CCOT, the mega prison in El Salvador used by the Trump administration, as well as elections in Thailand and Bangladesh, 2 fledgling democracies trying to find their way out of their authoritarian past. Actually, I'm working on the Bangladesh one as I record this, so hopefully it'll be out by the time this goes up. Let me know in the comments what you think about Takaichi's win, what it means for global politics and the international community, and also let me know what other stuff you think I should cover.